Well, you can hardly take any pride in calling yourself a storyteller if you're not sharing stories a lot. This one is not an original piece by any stretch. This is something I borrowed a long time ago. We're talking about a very small town in the United States, right at the beginning of the 21st century. When I say a small town, I mean a small town. I'm essentially talking about a town where the population is hardly 1,500 people. Hard to imagine in a country like ours sometimes. Just 1,500 people in a town. But yes, there's this one big church, one big high school, one big community college, one big place where everybody comes and buys their stuff, a market of sorts, and so on and so forth. Everybody in the town pretty much knows everybody else. One of these 1,500 people is our main character, Bob. Now, Bob has had a tragic life over the last 5 years. He got divorced, separated from his wife. She took the children with her. Ever since that happened, he's sort of lost the plot, quit his job, spent pretty much a couple of years inside the house, gained a lot of weight, and so on and so forth. But right about the time our story starts is when Bob has decided to move on with life. And one of the first things he did, like a lot of us, was to focus on the physical side of his health. He just made a promise to himself that tomorrow morning, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a jog. And he did the next morning. And when I say morning, it was a very cold, very chilly morning, one of those towns where it snows a lot in the winter, a very harsh winter of sorts. And as Bob had just about completed his first 100 meters, he was not even jogging really, just walking. From the slippery road, a car came flying into the pavement where Bob was jogging and smashed right into him. Now, Bob was immediately rushed to the hospital. Like I said, it's a very small town, pretty much everyone knows everyone else. News spread like wildfire, and by the afternoon that day, everybody in the town knew that Bob is not going to make it. So one by one, family by family, friends, schoolmates, classmates, Bob has spent his entire life in this town. People started visiting him in the hospital. The scene in the hospital is, as you can imagine, Bob is covered with all of these tubes that are coming out of his mouth, his nose, his entire body. There are all these machines which are making weird noises and giving us different readings of sorts. And Bob is lying there pretty much almost unconscious. Yes, he can hear stuff. People are saying their goodbyes. People are saying nice things about him. People are telling him how much they're going to miss him. People are trying to comfort him at this time. And Bob's lying there like a vegetable. One of the last people is someone who was actually with Bob throughout those 2 days. And by the second day, pretty much everyone had come and met Bob and said what they wanted to do. Said what they wanted to. One of the last people who was still in the room was the priest from the local church. Again, someone the entire town knew because they all knew each other. Now, the priest was trying to do his job. The priest was trying to comfort Bob. The priest was sharing stories from the Bible. The priest was trying to sort of lose a little weight when it comes to the emotion of death, trying to lighten it a little for Bob, and just reading to him for hours and hours on end. While he was going through one of those verses, the priest suddenly realized that Bob was trying to say something. Now the priest immediately thought that, okay, maybe there's something that he wants me to do, maybe there's something that is unfinished business when it comes to Bob, and he really wanted to understand what he was trying to say. But the problem was, there was no audio, there was no sound that was coming out of Bob's mouth. He was trying very hard, it was physically visible that he was trying very hard for those words to come out of his mouth, but nothing was coming out of his mouth. Eventually, Bob made a gesture like this. He obviously wanted a pen and a piece of paper. And the priest, he had a notepad always inside his overcoat. He took that out immediately, sort of held his hands together, put the notepad there, gave him the pen, helped him, supported him in even writing that text. And just as soon as he started writing in that weird handwriting, as you can imagine, at that stage. Suddenly, Bob just sort of lifted his body and fell down on the bed with a thud. The machine started making these weird noises. It was very clear that Bob was gone. The priest immediately panicked. He took that notepad in one motion. He took that notepad and the pen, put it inside his pocket, ran out of the room, called the doctors in, the nurses in. The doctors came in and they declared him dead. Now, a couple of days later, Bob's funeral was planned. Again, pretty much the entire town was there. People were giving speeches. People were reciting again verses from the Bible. People were talking about Bob, sharing their experiences with Bob, with everybody else. Just before the coffin was supposed to be lowered into the grave, pretty much the final act, the final ritual of the ceremony, suddenly the priest realized he had his last words with him inside his pocket. He had the same notepad inside his pocket now too. He always did. And the priest announced, "Oh, I also have his last words with me." He was trying to say something right before he passed away. He took out that notepad, looked at everybody, then looked at the paper, came to that page. Now I'm assuming he didn't say it out loud. What was written on the page was, "You idiot, you're standing on my oxygen tube." Now I'll let that sink in for a second. The idea through this story is not to share a joke, not on Bob's expense. I love him and he's gone. The idea is, I want you to imagine and feel for a second how frustrating, how suffocating, literally suffocating it must have been for Bob when he couldn't tell somebody when they were standing on his oxygen tube. There was this piece of wire which was helping him breathe and stay alive for 5 more minutes, but someone was standing on it. Suffocating, right? What I want you to do now is every time you feel in life that you're not able to communicate properly what you want to, every time you feel your message is lost, every time you feel you can't speak, every time you feel even if you said something else was understood, you have to remind yourself of that suffocation. It is suffocating. When we have something to say and we are not able to do it, it is suffocating. When we want someone to understand something and they're not able to understand it, by anyone's fault, it could be yours, it could be someone else's, the listener or the speaker. But every time that happens, it is a suffocating exercise. And I want you to remember that man lying on a bed, breathing through machines and suffocating inch by inch, second by second. So this is what we do. We give you the toolkit to make sure that you're not suffocating. The idea in communication is that it's not so difficult to convey messages. It should not be this difficult to convey messages. Remember Bob, remember the suffocation, and remember that it's our responsibility to find a way to express what we want to, and it's our responsibility to find a way to understand what other people are saying as much as possible. It could be one of the hardest skills, but there are rules you can follow and make it really easy on yourself. If you have not found that toolkit yet, reach out, we'll help.